This is Gary Atencio with CNTV, and today we are in Canada. I am here with Katie K. For years, she has been helping you release your energetic blocks, rewire your nervous system, and activate your energetic powers. I am joined here with the holistic physiotherapist, hypnotherapist, energetic healer. Katie, thanks so much for joining us here today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is an honor.
I'm going to start off a little bit about yourself. You were formally educated with a master's degree in physical therapy at Western University. You are licensed and certified in multiple areas. What began as a deeply sensitive empath as a child, you now help others really remember their divine potential. Share with me really how this all got started for you.
So I grew up when I was younger with quite a bit of chronic pain in my body, and I didn't really understand what was going on. I did have some running injuries, but I always had this weird, always something going on. So that started my journey a little bit. What was interesting is I ended up going to India and getting some pretty alternative therapy treatments, which exposed me to a lot of the energetic healing stuff that I am doing now. And it really introduced me to a different type of therapy even before I was a physiotherapist. So I studied a lot of sort of high-level yoga teachings, energetic healings in India. I worked with shamans. I worked with a medical qigong master who ended up actually fixing me from some really weird pains that I was having even after surgery, which didn't fix my pain. So this is all before I was a physical therapist. So I had a lot of exposure to very alternative, non-scientific type of healing before I was a physical therapist. But at some point I decided, okay, I do need to root myself in a profession to, so people can take me seriously. And there's a benefit to having a license in Canada to practice. And so I decided to go back to school despite having all these sort of alternative experiences. I was a yoga teacher. I did craniosacral therapy. I did counseling hypnotherapy. I studied with a PhD psychotherapist who turned into a spiritual hypnotherapist even before my degree. So I had all that experiences before I decided to go back to do my master's degree, just to root it into something more professional.
When you
So
decided, what am I going to do when I grow up? I mean, up until that point, you're really like a human sponge. You were taking in all this information, yet at the same time being affected by it. So you were a product of what you were learning. I mean, as humans, at some point, we all experience physical and emotional pain. As we live in a physical world, would you say many of us are not aware of the energy around us and in ourselves? And is this awareness really kind of the starting point in what you try to teach?
yeah, I mean, that was always something that I was very aware of in my body. I had a very acute sense of every energetic sense in my body, which almost drove me crazy because it was almost a curse. That I could feel everything, and not only in my body, but other people's bodies. So when I work on people in the clinic, I can feel what's going on for them energetically as well as emotionally. And I will often let them know even in the clinic. So yeah, that became very apparent to me early on. That's not something they totally teach you in physical therapy school. It's all very scientific. They don't really introduce the energetic stuff. That's something that I had sort of experienced prior to my education, partly just because of my intuitive gifts, but also my experience in my own healing with energetic work prior to becoming a physical therapist.
Interesting. I mean, if we all have energy within us, then do most of us experience energy blocks? And if so, what does that mean? I mean, what does that look like in our lives? What should we look for?
Well, when we say energy blocks, if you want to make it more scientific, really the nervous system is an electrical system, right? So it runs an electrical current through our bodies. So it is an energy system in itself. So it is intertwined with what we would understand maybe in yoga, like the chakra system and the energetic blocks. So much of that intertwines with the nervous system. So basically those are one and the same, but when we talk in the yoga world, we may say energy, but when we talk in science, we would call it the nervous system. So basically, they're both they're both similar in the sense that the nervous system is running electrical currents. Those that in itself can have interruptions and blocks that will show up in the body. But even deeper to that, they call it the subtle body. There's energetic blocks that we can pick up. That's beyond science. It's something beyond what we can perceive. It's more some of an experience that it's like an extra sixth sense to sort of pick up on that kind of feeling. But most people will feel it as a sense of dense, like a density or a thickness, tension. So those are all kind of symptoms of energetic blocks as well as physical blocks, but just they're slightly different. If you can't move your arm, that's mechanical. But if there's some weird tension and you don't really know where it's coming from, that's often energetic.
Sounds like something we've all experienced, I would say. I mean, we're complicated beings, and we're learning more and more that it's more than what we can just see on the surface. I mean, with over 2 decades in energetic healing, I mean, this is your soul journey to empower and awaken these healing powers in others. Do we all have the ability kind of to heal ourselves, would you say?
I say yes, often with some guidance and catalysts. We do often need, even in the physical body. For example, if you were to needing an adjustment, sometimes you can't do it on your own because you can't physically approach an area in a certain direction. Say if you need your leg pulled because your hips are out of alignment, you can't really pull your own leg. So there's certain situations where you do need some external help or catalysts, but essentially all you're doing is just catalyzing the internal process that's already happening. So we all have those internal intelligence of the body that is trying to create harmony and like an equilibrium. So sometimes you need some external forces to help with that, but essentially we all have the ability within ourselves in our intelligence system to heal ourselves once everything is sort of in motion and in place to heal.
That is exciting. I mean, you help your clients to activate and upgrade their frequency while elevating their consciousness. How do we know we're kind of in a low frequency? Are there some signs we can maybe look for them for something like that?
Yeah, so when it's sort of a new age thing that this high frequency, low frequency, I'd say a lower frequency is the feeling of just constantly being in a high stress, sort of a fight or flight. You're just in survival mode. There's this constant angst. There's a constant fight or flight, maybe fear, which really shuts down a lot of the brain systems. We can't think clearly if we're constantly in this panic mode or fight or flight. So, or just really maybe down in a really deep, depression or something. So that would be kind of signs of sort of lower frequency where our energy is low. We're tired, we're in bed, we can barely get out of the bed kind of feeling. So that would be considered low frequency. Higher frequency, you're moving into more natural states of joy, natural states of happiness, spontaneous, just feelings of bliss and just really kind of the more elevated emotions, lightness as well, and energy.
I mean, so fight or flight is something that can happen, yet we're not designed to be in that state forever or in long periods of time. I mean, as a child, you were very sensitive to energy in your own body. Your services include clearing energies that block you. Is this really kind of the first step? Tell me what happens in the clearing process.
So part of my gifts is picking up on where people are blocked and they don't often feel that in themselves. So that is sort of a little bit of a gift that I have in being able to go through somebody's body and actually feel it. Though often once I point it out, they tend to be able to pick up on it themselves. But sometimes it takes a little bit of just honing in on an area and reminding them, like, can you tune into this part of your body? And that's a skill in itself. Not a lot of people can tune in and zero into like specific areas of their body, and really feel into that area. So that is something I've honed as a physical therapist, but also just having had that skill my whole life. So part of the clearing is actually tuning into it first and getting them to tune into where where I'm working. Often I will clear it myself, or I will get them to help me with some breathing techniques, some awareness techniques. And I will use some of my hypnotherapy techniques as well to sort of reprogram their mind and do suggestions while they're in this state while I'm clearing them. So there's sort of a mind-body experience going on as well.
Wow, that's very fascinating. I mean, this is not accomplished. It's not accomplished physically or even through thought alone. How does hypnotherapy access our subconscious and really our nervous system, like you say?
So basically when I do a treatment, I do the clearings first, and that's on purpose. I actually generally move into the hypnotherapy later in the session because I get them into a deeper state. In order to do hypnotherapy, we tend to have to get to the theta state, which is sort of like the third state in the brainwave cycle. So you get to a lower brain wave where it's slower. And it's almost like you're just before that point where you're about to go to sleep. It's that sort of deep, deep relaxation. You're not asleep, but you're really deeply relaxed. And that's where we access the subconscious mind, where you're no longer sort of caught up in the analytical part of your brain. You're really in a deeper state where you are picking up on information within the subconscious mind, but you're also able to reprogram it in that same place.
I mean, when you're in this deep theta hypnotherapy, what do you receive? Are we talking messages, images, and are these specific for each individual?
So for me, and this isn't typical for I say hypnotherapy in general, I do receive messages because I also have some intuitive gifts as a channel. So I receive messages as to how to proceed. But I also intertwine that with what the actual training in hypnotherapy, which is to use imagery and metaphors and symbolism, which is the language of the subconscious mind, in order to decide what my goal is. If I'm going back to, say, revisit an old belief system that's not helpful anymore, that might have started in early childhood or something like that, or even imprinted from, parenting or even in the womb even, or I move forward in the future where we're looking at where you're going and tapping into sort of that person's highest potential. And
Wow.
so you
I
you
mean,
can go both ways.
you say that the deepest healing is always energetic, which, I mean, it makes sense because our nervous system is an energetic system. Once this clearing is done, what takes place in the rewiring that you mentioned? Touch on that a little bit more.
So there's a few things that's going on. So when you're rewiring your brain, you are building new circuits in the brain, which is called neuroplasticity. So you're actually rewiring new circuits in the brain. So both the subconscious and the nervous system tend to like the path of least resistance because the nervous system is an electrical system. It doesn't like resistance, just like any electrical thing. It will go to the path of least resistance until you build new connections. And so as you're building these new connections in the brain, through the process of neuroplasticity, where we're building new neuron and neural connections, which also works in combination of the subconscious mind, then you are slowly rewiring the patterns of the brain, which is also working on the energetics, obviously, because the nervous system is the energetic system of the body.
I mean, so in the rewiring, you are actually kind of reprogramming the subconscious mind with a new set of beliefs. I imagine this can be probably life-changing for a lot of people. What has the response been when they kind of break free from some of these limiting beliefs they've had for forever?
So, it's not always instant. And the
Yeah.
reason why it's not instantaneous is because it's been there for so long. So when you're dealing with neuroplasticity and building new connections in the brain, it does take a little bit of a process just because it takes time for that to build. So usually there'll be a process. It's not usually sort of a one-time instant fix in one session. It is a process of unwinding a system and then rebuilding kind of a new system. So there's like the unlearning phase and then the relearning phase, which also happens in the physical body when you're breaking body patterns as well. So you got to unlearn a pattern before you relearn a new pattern. So it's not always instant, especially if it's a really deeply held belief because it's been there for a long time. So those ones take a little bit longer to rewire. But usually what people will find is it'll be subtle. It'll be little things like, oh, you know what? I actually feel like really calm all of a sudden. Normally, the triggers that normally would trigger me are not triggering me anymore. Suddenly, there's like a bit more of like confidence or stuff like that. So there's little shifts and they seem subtle at the beginning, but then you suddenly realize, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't bother me anymore. And it used to bother me.
So the process itself takes some time. That aha moment isn't like you turned on a switch. The aha moment might be when you go, you know what? I don't have that feeling anymore. That is pretty cool. And you realize that later on. I mean, once the clearing and the rewiring are done, what is the activations and why is this step essential in really propelling us forward?
So the activations, in my opinion, this is really the energetic work at the end. It's sort of the cherry on top. It's kind of adding fuel to the fire. It's the little extra bit at the end where you're suddenly like there's a creation of some urgency in life. You're like, you know what? I got to go out and do this now. There's some motor. It's like I've thrown fuel onto the fire. It's sort of the igniter in the system. It's almost, and I call it kind of the ignition of the soul. It's sort of all of a sudden you're prompted to be like, you know what? I got to make this happen. I've got one lifetime and I need to step into this part of me. It's sort of the push forward, you know. So after the rewiring, you still need a push to like really get the motivation and sort of the deep sense of purpose to drive you and fuel you forward. And that sort of energy that I activate in people kind of feeds that fire.
Wow, totally sustainable when you get that fire lit like that and you keep activating that way. I mean, I imagine healing on all levels does not generally occur. I mean, obviously in just one session. So what is the first step that you recommend? Or as a package, the best value to gain the best results? And can it be done in person? Can it be done virtually? How do they get started?
So no, I usually suggest at least 4 sessions. One is not enough. So it's generally speaking, one is just the intro to the experience, but it's not going to be necessarily transformative because it's a process. So
Yeah.
because you got to do one to get to the next step, to get to the next step. So I really do encourage people, even in the clinic when I'm working on people physically, it's like, if we're going to get this started, you kind of have to commit to the process. Otherwise, you're not going to see the results that are possible. So I say a minimum of 4, but there's always layers to healing. So we can always go deeper, but I'd say a minimum of 4 to really go through a little bit of the process. But you know, so much of life, because I'm also working through, I'd say almost even more layers than working in the physical body when I'm doing energetic stuff. There's always more I can do, but I'd say at least 4, and that's part of the package that I offer is at least 4, where we start the releasing phase, the rewiring phase, and then the activation phase.
No different than going to the gym. You don't go to the gym and expect results overnight. I mean, it's a process, and the same thing goes with that, especially when we're talking about some deep-seated beliefs that take some time for us to overcome. Can this also be done virtually? Can you work with people or just in person?
Yeah, sorry, you did ask me that. Okay. Yes, I can do both. I find the in-person experience slightly more profound as far as the energetic part. The hypnotherapy part can be done easily online. I think there's just something about because I do actually put my hands on somebody if I'm working with them in person. It is slightly more profound in person. There's a little bit more
Yes.
going on, but I can absolutely do it online as well for people that are further away and can't come to Squamish, BC.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to energy, I've experienced Reiki myself in the hands. There's a lot of energy there that I've never experienced before. I mean, Katie, with 20 plus years of personal experience and training, you have a deep, detailed, and intricate knowledge of the body, really on all levels. As you work with others to create harmony in the body, is this rewarding for you?
It's definitely my soul calling in life. Absolutely. It is definitely what I've been put on this planet to do. And I've known that for a very long time, since I was younger.
Excellent. I enjoy capturing your story and sharing it with our viewers out there. Viewers, take a look at the bottom of the screen. What you're going to do is see her website. On the website, see all the services she provides in quantum energetic, soul aligned hypnotherapy. Read the testimonials right there of many that she has helped on her website. You can also order her book right there on the site as well. Reach out today, because to shake the earth from under your feet, you need to transform the deepest levels of your being. And that is with Katie K. Reclaim, attune, and rewire. This is Gary Atencio with CNTV. And if you don't know, now you know.